Hi guys, hope you're okay. This is Daniel. So, this is a quick video talking about how to be more assertive in friendships because if you're anything like me, or like I have been prone to be in the past, I've been a bit of a pushover when it comes to certain relationships in my life. And the reason why that is because I'm quite an empathic person, I'm very sensitive, and because of that, I always think about other people's feelings, maybe beyond my own. And that, to a degree, is a good thing. But then the issue is that when you put the needs of other people before yourself all the time, what can happen is that your sense of self-worth becomes eroded because you'll end up doing things out of necessity as opposed to out of actually wanting to do it. And when you get friendships like that, for example, it can be really difficult to say no because when you want to try and make people like you, or if you want to have a really good rapport with someone, or if you just generally want to be nice, it's very easy to try and bend over backwards, whether that is you going out of your way to pick that person up in the car, or you going to their place very often without them coming to yours. You're often finding yourself making the other person's life easier, whilst at the same time you're always kind of being the person who picks up the slack in some other area. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's very, very conditional depending on what you want to do as an individual. But because I found myself in that situation a fair few times, that caused me to question things. And I think it's definitely a good indicator that things might be a little bit unbalanced. But just to give you some further context, I've got a story to go with this whole video. Because recently I heard from a friend of mine who I haven't spoken to for over a year and a little bit now. And the reason why we stopped talking was because, excuse me, we've been friends for roughly about 3 to 4 years, and we had a really good friendship. We met through work, and that's usually the case. Most people tend to meet people through the work. He spends so much time there, it's irrelevant. But anyway, we stopped talking, and the reason why we stopped talking is because I felt that during the friendship there were lots of small things that would happen, and when I questioned that person about these particular instances, there were lots of non what is the term I want to use here? The response I got was not necessarily very, very direct. It was very, I mean, it's almost being like gaslit basically. So, say for example, if you ask someone, did you do a certain thing, and they say, no, I didn't do that thing, it's in your head. And you think, okay, that's fair enough. But then there are only so many times you can hear that before you think there's a bit of a pattern of behaviour emerging here, and I'm not entirely sure it's completely me. And that was reinforced by the fact that this person used to be quite fond of telling occasional white lies. So, for example, there was a time when she was on a diet and her boyfriend found some McDonald's in the dustbin, and instead of saying, "Oh yeah, this is my McDonald's," I've eaten two Big Mac burgers, she blamed me while she was on the phone to him and said, "Oh yeah, that belongs to Daniel." And I'm thinking, well, first and foremost, I don't eat Big Macs, so that was really insulting. And second of all, I just thought, why would you lie about something like that? Like, why would you lie to your potential, or, well, supposed partner, say that you've not eaten this food and blame it on somebody else? It just struck me as being really juvenile. So, anyway, that was another red flag. And the third red flag was a scenario where, we'd be around other people and then this person, switched up a little bit. And by switched up, I just mean that they just became a completely different person and the whole dynamic changes. And usually that for me is an indicator that there's some underlying issue with the friendship that isn't being expressed, because what I realized was that this particular person, they would often speak about other people very, very negatively. It was always a constant stream of, this person's said this person's done that. And I would always be like, well, have you spoken to that person? Have you asked them, what the issue is? And it was always a case of, oh, it's no point, there's no point, because if I ask them, then it's going to be, denied, which is ironic because that's exactly what they did to me. Um, and, with that example, they always say that the person who expresses the thing that they dislike in others usually does that themselves. Not always, but I'm not saying I haven't done this myself and been very evasive, because not every situation requires a confrontation. And I think that's the other thing to take away from this, because going to the inciting incident of the story, or the main point of it, um, I just took a decision after I felt that the friendship was not really producing much of a benefit anymore. Um, I just thought, you know what? I think it's best that we just amicably part ways before it turns into a situation where we're just being tolerant of each other, because no one wants to be tolerated. It's just not the done thing to do. If you are friends with someone, you want to feel like you can be 100% honest with them. And from the time where you feel like you can't be honest, I think it's best just to part ways. So we parted ways, and then they got in touch with me last year, and they were looking for some answers, really, because I have a tendency to unceremoniously just leave a situation if I feel like there's just no point in having to say anything. And for the reasons I mentioned before, when you express your opinion to someone who isn't accountable and doesn't have the capacity to see where the issues are, then I think that you've got more right to just walk away from a situation. That's just me. But if that person asks the question and says, what was the issue, then, you can give them an explanation. But I think sometimes you always have to gauge, the relationship and say, does this person have the capacity to even see what I'm going to say? And secondly, do I have the energy to even go back into this scenario and give them an explanation when I know it's going to fall on deaf ears? And as you get older, as I keep saying, you just become less tolerant of a lot of things. So I have just got to the stage now where if something doesn't really give me peace or give me a sense of just self-assuredness, or I don't know, it just means I'm not going to deal with it. So I would rather walk away and do that with a sense of dignity than hold on to a situation that has passed its sell by date. And that way you don't have to have a massive bust up. You don't have to have a big declaration of war. You just respect what the situation was, move to the side, keep it going, but then you also keep the door open for future communications. And hence now I've received some communication. I've responded and given a very light-hearted message back. This particular person has now probed a bit further, asking for more information. I don't know if I want to give them that information on the basis that I just don't think it is relevant to where we are at the moment. And that might sound like, very petty, but at the same time, I think that you have to really, really affirm the words that you say, because when we last got in touch with each other, I said, everything's cool. We don't have to worry about anything in between. We can still say hi if we see each other, but I just don't have any interest in hanging out. And I still stand by that. I genuinely don't feel like anything has changed for me. But it just really goes to show that, whether someone sees you as a villain at the time in the friendship, or they see many flaws outside of themselves, I think the good thing about having some time away from particular people and some time to reflect and get introspective, it just allows you to see, or allows them to see, the pros and cons of the relationship. Usually when people are coming back, there are more pros than cons, but equally, it also gives you the opportunity to see whether your life has improved in the absence of this person. And if the answer is yes, then it's likely that you probably had a toxic friendship and you needed to back away from it. So, but that's life. It definitely happens. It will happen continuously throughout life. And one thing I was always told by my mum growing up is that the rules of the playground, they never go. You always have your popular people, you have your bullies, you have the shy people, and that's just the way that relationships are. But the good thing about taking a step back is that if you choose to eradicate yourself from if you choose to take yourself out of a situation, you effectively then don't have to worry about the politics that go with that situation, because you've relinquished your right to have a say, but then you've also relinquished your responsibility to have to be a present party. So They're my quick thoughts on that. Bit of a long-winded one, but hopefully it resonates with somebody. What are your stories, if you have any? You know, have you dealt with friends that have become quite toxic and maybe need to readdress the balance of friendship and how things work? Um, have you got any feedback on my particular story? Do you think I did the right thing by walking away and keeping things amicable? Would you have done things very different? I'd love to hear from anybody who's got any insight in this. And yeah, they're my quick thoughts, like I say. Hope you're all well. Take care. Speak soon. Goodbye.